The following video uses clips for review purposes and other copyrighted material for the purposes of criticism. This video follows fair use laws. This video may contain spoilers, graphic content, and/or strong language. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you were to think back in 2009 of the top grossing movies of all time, movies like Titanic, Gone with the Wind, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Vin Diesel's XXX, considering how flooded it is in the used stores, would have probably have come to mind. But what if a new movie from a guy who made Piranha 2: The Spawning and an episode of Dark Angel and nothing else impressive to his name whatsoever, was releasing a science fiction fantasy about a group of furries getting lost into their VR headsets? Would have taken the world by storm. Released on December 18th, 2009, opening to over 77 million in the North American markets, and really from there, sky's the limit. No, really, this movie literally never stopped making money. Like, for a moment, Avengers Endgame was like, it's my time to shine, and Avatar's like, nah, I'm getting a second run before my sequel. It's crazy because, like, when you hear people talk about their favorite fandoms, this isn't the Avatar series I normally hear about. It's not that one either. Like, sure, yeah, I remember a lot of people talking about the movie when it was in theaters. I was in the 9th grade at the time, and pretty much everyone in my class had seen it. I went to theaters 3 times to see this. Once because I wanted to see the movie, once to see it in 3D, and one more time because I was basically dragged by a friend. Honestly, with that third viewing, I was blue dabba deba dead, and I really had no more interest in it. I remember when the film came out on DVD, and whenever we got to watch a movie in class, everybody wanted to watch it. But literally like a year later, I never heard anyone else like ever talk about this film, and it's remained that way, only to be brought up in the top grossing movies of all time conversations. I'm sure being the 3D trendsetter helped inflate its box office earnings. After all, literally every film tried to copy it from there on out. It was a huge advancement in terms of what CG technology could do, considering most of the film is CG rendered. But I just think of things like Star Wars, Harry Potter, the real Avatar, and how much that fandom keeps talking about the worlds they love so much, and I just never hear anybody talk about this movie in that light. Of course, being the biggest movie of all time, you would also come with video games across all platforms of the time. I actually borrowed the PSP copy from a friend and apparently still have it. Hey buddy, I got your game. Deliver $30,000 to my front door. The game get. I remember the game actually being somewhat surprisingly fun, although I'm not sure if I ever beat it though. It earned some pretty mixed reviews on Metacritic, but considering that it's a licensed game, it might as well be certified fresh with those ratings. It's worth the same amount. So I figure with the sequel right around the corner and some derivative content, it might as well be a good enough time to revisit James Cameron's Avatar and its video game counterpart, James Cameron's Avatar on the PS3. It's been years since I've watched Avatar, and honestly I put off buying the film forever because it's honestly one I've never really been super interested in jumping back into. I ended up grabbing this copy at a flea market for $1, but there's literally no special features on this thing, it's only the movie. So eventually I'll probably upgrade to something with some decent special features because I could imagine there being some really cool behind the scenes for this film. The film opens up on the wilds of Pandora with some epic tribal drumming and Jake narrating some exposition. Honestly, just get used to almost all the dialogue in the film being exposition because there's a ton they try to cram into this almost 3-hour runtime. Jake talks about being able to fly and be free in his dreams, but sooner or later you always have to wake up. This opening line sets up the stage for the whole story. Jake wakes up from cryo after being asleep for 6 years in a space shuttle when he talks about his brother Tommy, who was a scientist who ended up dead. While Tommy was the scientist, Jake was a marine grunt who was taking Tommy's contract over because they're twins and they share enough DNA for Jake to pilot his brother's avatar. Landing down, you can see how humans have already started the destruction of Pandora for its resources. This whole film can echo colonization and deforestation pretty hard. We also learn that the air on Pandora isn't breathable for humans, so it's like other parts of the world right now. I love how almost prison-like the headquarters looks like with its barbed wire and stuff. We learn that Jake is a paraplegic. They actually do a pretty good job with Jake's legs throughout the film, but there is some inconsistencies in their size, but it's never really like super noticeable. We are then introduced into Stephen Lang's character. He's the bad guy, right? Like, he's always the bad guy. He spews about how awful Pandora is and how dangerous it is. Speaking of the Na'vi, the local indigenous humanoids, after the briefing, Norm hunts down Jake. Hey, wait a minute.
Please sit on my face.
Yeah, I thought that was you. Norm and Jake are Avatar drivers. Avatars are bodies that the driver controls remotely. They're a mix of human and Na'vi DNA, and they're made to look like the Na'vi version of their controller. We are then introduced to Grace as the film dumps every person in front of you with exposition. Ah yes, Papyrus, the font of the Na'vi subtitles. Grace just straight up on Jake for not being his brother. Through yet another exposition dump, we learn that the reason that they're here is for unobtainium, which sells for a buttload of money. Unobtainium looks more like obtainium to me. You could say that this film is a statement on America's greed and how we are willing to put the environment and its inhabitants in jeopardy for money, especially considering the debriefing room's windows is literally set up to look like an American flag. Maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. Anyways, it's time for Jake to jump into his avatar's body, to where a sensory overload and the ability to walk kind of makes him go a little wild. But even though it's like a sensory overload, he's still a Marine that should have enough training to listen to the people around him instead of just going haywire with it and take off running.
That day on, if I was going somewhere, I was running.
I love the meme here about Grace having a Stanford shirt for her avatar. Like, you know these clothes are custom made, right? Like, I don't think Shaq went to Stanford, so she's out here just dunking on these people. Also, something worth noting, there's a bunch of avatars of this place, right? But this is the most you'll ever see of them again. Like, wouldn't it make sense later in the film to use them in battle? Nope, they don't exist for pretty much the rest of the movie. After his VR time, Jake goes to see the Colonel. Stephen Lang tells him that from here on out, he'll report to him about what's going on with the Avatar program and provide him with intel about the indigenous people. He promises Jake that if he finishes the mission, that he'll get his legs back before he gets sent home. The Avatar group heads out in the wild to collect some samples when Jake kind of just wanders off. Like, seriously, dude, everyone has told you about how dangerous this world is. You just don't listen. Of course, he goes touching stuff too and runs into whatever this thing is. Honestly, a lot of this film still looks amazing today in terms of its CGI, but this guy definitely doesn't look the best. Well, the Nargacuga shows up and begins chasing Jake, separating him from the rest of the group. This thing is sweet looking, but again, a lot of the creatures don't hold up as well as the environment or the Na'vi. Barely escaping, Jake finds himself completely lost with nothing but the clothes on his back, relying on basic survival instincts and presumed at this point military training. He begins to find his way back as night falls when we see a Na'vi following him. Readying her bow, she is shown a sign from Awal, or basically the god of Pandora. When Jake gets surrounded by a bunch of baby Nargacugas, or I guess viper wolves as you learn later in the video game, Neytiri, the Na'vi following him, jumps in to help save him. I like how every time Neytiri is on the attack, her tail wags. She immediately puts out the fire as the world around them begins to glow like a frat boy's bedroom under blacklight. Honestly, I love a lot of the design here. It's really beautiful.
If you love your little forest friends, why not let them just kill my ass?
God, I hate that line delivery there. It makes me cringe every time. From here, Jake begins following Neytiri around like a lost puppy. When these creature things begin to kind of attract themselves around Jake, making Neytiri change her mind. She takes Jake back to her people. When her people find them first, Sute claims that Jake is a demon and he is not allowed to be there. Sute being a potential mate for Neytiri to help kind of take over the tribe. But Neytiri stands up for Jake and they take him back to the home base at the giant tree. Neytiri's father is the tribe leader. Wait, does this make Neytiri a Disney princess now? Neytiri's father is trying to decide whether or not if he should just kill Jake, and Jake's all like, "Howdy sir, nice to meet you," trying to shake the leader's hand. Like, seriously, how stupid of a character are you? Neytiri's mother comes down, who is like their shaman who interprets Awa. They decide to keep Jake around so they can learn about him, but also so Jake can learn about them with Neytiri as his teacher. Jake tells everybody about what's happening, and we get the main conflict of the film. The Na'vi's home happens to be on the richest deposit of unobtainium around, so they need to remove it for it to become obtainium. You could say this is the actual unobtainium. Still f***ing nothing, really? Heading back into the Na'vi's world, you can see that Norm is getting a little jealous of Jake. Also, I have a question. Do the Avatar drivers need to sleep, or are they asleep driving the body? It never really answers this question, and it seems like these people never sleep. The next day, Neytiri starts teaching Jake about the bond. This is where the Na'vi use the stuff in their braids to connect with the nature around them, allowing them to bond with certain things to merge as a pair. This is just being a physical representation to the Na'vi's connection to the world around them, and further deepening their emotional connection to the world. It's a foreign, almost alien concept to us that maybe makes the statement that we are no longer connected to nature.
Blow it out your ass!
Jake breaks down what the tree is to the evil guys when the scientist overhears them, so Danzig decides to pack up the team and head to a remote operation in the Hallelujah Mountains, so there's no micromanaging. Again, the floating mountains are pretty cool. There's just a lot of the world that I find to be super interesting on a planetary and ecological standpoint that all the time we spend outside of the Na'vi feels somewhat stunted and can come off as somewhat boring comparatively. I do prefer the setting of the smaller headquarters than the big military complex, but the next day with Neytiri Neytiri, we get introduced to the Ekrons, which is just badass. I mean, look at this thing. She tells him once paired to an Ekron that it will not pair to anybody else. From here, we pretty much get a simple montage of Jake learning the Na'vi language, how to ride, hunt, shoot arrows, becoming the true Na'vi inside. You can slightly see Jake's character's growth into connecting with the world and becoming more and more in tune with his connection. He even eventually gets the clan to let Grace back in. Okay, I guess they do answer my whole sleep question thing. Obviously, they start to build the relationship between Jake and Neytiri that we can see coming from a mile away. After an impressive kill, Neytiri says he is ready for his own Ekron. The way to find your Ekron that pairs with you is apparently to find the one that wants to kill you and wrestle it.
That bitch, tail. Choke that bitch out.
Flying above, Jake sees the Tree of Souls, the Na'vi's most sacred place. I wonder if this will be a place of importance in the future. One day, flying around, Jake and Neytiri are chased off by Toruk, the Last Shadow. Basically a bigger, badder version of the Ekran. Neytiri tells Jake that her grandfather used to ride on one and he helped unite the different clans. I'm sure this will never come up again, especially not during a moment when it's needed. At this point, Jake has completely forgotten about his deal to get the Na'vi to leave in 3 months, says he casually mentioned it being 3 months now. Heading back to speak to Stephen Lang, he convinces him to give him a little bit more time, which Lang doesn't seem to like all that much. Heading back to the Na'vi clan, Jake undergoes a ceremony where he becomes a man and is welcomed into the tribe as one of them. Afterwards, Jake chases Neytiri through the Tree of Voices. When linked up to the tree, you can hear the voices of their ancestors, like it's saved to the cloud or something. Of course, Neytiri tells Jake that he may now choose a partner, and he's like,
I love you, bitch. I ain't gonna never stop loving you, bitch.
The two begin to kiss. Make the link now, Jake. The next morning, Neytiri is rudely awakened to a massive deforestation effort moving in. She desperately tries to wake up Jake, but he's basically lifeless. Like, I wonder what's going on in her head right now. I know they call them dreamwalkers, but I doubt they really understand what these avatars are. Funny enough, Doc Grace won't let him back into his body until he has his Wheaties. When Jake wakes up to the chaos, he tries to stop the massive vehicle. Of course, the guy remote piloting looks like an ice road trucker reject. The boss tells him to keep going and they'll move, which causes Jake to smash the cameras out, which leads to the soldiers opening fire. The Na'vi find more of their forest being destroyed, which causes them great grief and anger. Colonel Lang sees that it was Jake that smashed out the cameras, which infuriates him. Back to the Na'vi clan, Grace tries to calm them down while Jake tries to reason with them.
You mated with this woman?
Oh, shit.
That was some mean bush.
Jake demands the right to speak to them, but Colonel Lang shows up to the remote base and starts to remove them, which causes their bodies to drop. Neytiri jumps in to protect Jake's body.
You out of your goddamn mind?
That's some harsh clipping. Lang simply asks Jake to come back to the headquarters, which he complies. Back at the headquarters, Grace and Jake try to talk them out of what they're doing, when Jake gets caught in 4K saying there's no way to negotiate with the Na'vi, because the Na'vi want nothing from us but just to leave. Colonel Lang gets the okay from the boss to go after Home Tree and smoke them out. This dude is like straight up bloodthirsty. Grace comes and confronts the boss about the operation and talks him into letting them go back to talk to the Na'vi. Once back there, they try and warn the Na'vi, to which Jake basically tells them that he pulled the wool over their eyes this whole time, which clearly makes Neytiri upset. My culture isn't your second life. After this revelation, the Na'vi surround Jake and Grace with weapons, which is like a ready signal to Colonel Lang that negotiations are over. Seriously, look at the amount of firepower they sent there.
I'll do it with minimal casualties to the indigenous.
Yeah, right. Well, the army opens up fire, as they do, and kills a bunch of the Na'vi and brings down the Home Tree. Honestly, this is one of the best scenes in the whole film, as it cements the film's theme on colonization and the greed that pushes world destruction. Taking these themes and visually representing them in some harrowing moments, Jake and Grace get released from Mowat as she begins to beg them for their help if they really wanted them. The Na'vi scatter as the barrage of incineraries crumbles the base of the tree, sending it down and crushing everything in its path. Neytiri finds her father dying of a fatal wound, and the rest head towards the Tree of Souls for refuge. The boss pulls the plug on Grace and Jake, which leaves their bodies to drop once again, and landing their real bodies in jail. The Na'vi brings Grace's body with them, but leaves Jake's. I don't know if they left him for any other reason than just nobody was around him at the time. Trudy, or better known as Michelle Rodriguez, breaks the group out of the holding cell, and they take a plane to escape. Colonel Lang lands a few good shots as they leave, with one of the bullets hitting Grace. I love how the Colonel just gives like no literally busts out the door to shoot at them. Like, everyone in the room had to scramble to find masks because of the air. Hey, that guy don't have a mask. The rebels load up half of the mobile base and find somewhere deep in the mountains to set up base, somewhere close to the Tree of Souls. Now that's an entrance. They attempt to transfer Grace's soul into her avatar body since she's dying from her gunshot wound. The idea is basically use the Tree of Souls to upload her conscience and then download it into the avatar body, which is a whole discussion in and of itself, and I'm not ready to embark on that today. I love how the spirit light is synced up to the drums of the score. It feels super cinematic and it's just really cool. Unfortunately, Ripley doesn't make the jump and she tells Jake that she is with Awa. After her death, Jake makes the call to unite the clans once again and take down the Sky People. Jake, your white savior is showing. I do love the fact that they start this scene at night, and once Jake rallies the cause, the daylight starts shining through as to show the light of hope he brought to them. Colonel Lang debriefs an army for an all-out war with the goal of blowing up the spirit tree. So editor's note, while I was cutting this, I noticed something, and that is when we have the speech where Jake's talking to the clan and they fly up from the darkness into the light of hope, we see Jake rallying the Na'vi. When we cut to Stephen Lang's character talking to his group with light behind him, and then the room gets significantly darker quicker. I understand that they're doing that to turn on the projector thing, but I could also see it as a visual allegory of how the Na'vi have hope for their fight, and the human RDA military side is plunging into darkness with no hope.
Blow it out your ass!
Both sides ready up for the big climactic showdown. It would suck so much though to be one of those ground troops, and I just love these like mech looking things that are straight out of Aliens. Jake links up with AWOL to show AWOL what humans are capable of, also begging it to look into Grace's memories to see where they come from. This showdown is actually pretty epic and there's a ton of moving pieces. Whether it's CGI or practical, there's still a lot going on in these scenes, and the film doesn't really rely on jump cuts or shaky cam, but rather showing you everything. It's pretty impressive on a conceptual level and in its execution. You can tell exactly where the main characters are in relation to each other, and a lot of the CG holds up considering the film's age. I know I've said it before, but this movie would still look good by today's standards for the most part. I don't want to go into much detail about what's happening in the fight. Not only would I be here for like 30 years breaking it all down and pointing out every little detail, but I also think it's something you should just watch for yourself. I know I've spoiled pretty much everything in the film if you haven't seen it already, and we'll show a lot of what's going on here, but just watch it. It's a pretty great action set piece. Neytiri gets shot down, but Sute and Michelle Rodriguez both get killed in the fight. When all seems lost and the Na'vi are at the disadvantage, AWOL sends the horde of wildlife to help them out. It's a pretty cool like nature fighting back moment. The big hammerhead rhino killing Johnny Sins in the process. Again, I would hate to be a ground troop. Jake takes down the payload ship and heads to take out Colonel Lang's ship. Lang jumping out of the burning ship like a badass, on fire might I add you, to fight Jake head on. Well, with the help of the mech suit, that is. The Colonel finds their hideout when Neytiri comes riding out of the Nargacuga like a boss. The animal making short work of the mech's gun, but is no match for unfortunately the Rambo. The Colonel kills the beast, pinning Neytiri underneath it. Jake comes in to try and save Neytiri, and Jake takes on Lang in a one-on-one.
How's it feel to betray your own race?
I really like this line as it cements Jake's full transition into Na'vi. However, the Colonel breaks open the window in the lab, which causes him to suffocate going in and out of his avatar state. With Lang holding on to a drifting Jake, he goes in for the kill when Neytiri comes in clutch. Kobe! With Lang dead, Neytiri realizes where Jake's body is and saves him in the nick of time. This is the first time human Jake has interacted with Neytiri. With the humans being kicked to the curb besides a few chosen to stay, the film ends with Jake Sully being uploaded to the cloud and re-downloaded into the avatar body, and boom, credits. After revisiting Avatar after all these years, I gotta say I really do enjoy the film as a whole. Sure, most of the dialogue is exposition, sure it's a little white savoury, but it's still a pretty epic story about overcoming adversity that explores a super fascinating culture and world. Pandora is just a planet I want to explore. I'm way more interested in just the nature of the world. It's a world that makes me want to learn more about the animals in the ecosystem, and I would totally sit down to watch like a Blue Planet style documentary about Pandora. With that said, I do find some of the characters to be either one-dimensional or underdeveloped. Besides a few characters, we really don't get a ton of development with those we follow. Jake has a good arc, but that doesn't mean he's a super interesting character. As a lead, he feels more like a vehicle for the audience to superimpose over. He feels somewhat like an avatar for the viewer. With it pushing the boundaries of technology at the time with its CG, that has become a little dated now, but has held up well over the years, and bringing 3D back into the forefront of filmmaking, I can see why this went on to be the top grossing movie of all time. Even with its technical prowess, if it didn't have a good story and direction, then it wouldn't have went on to be what it is. It's comfort food. It's a comfortable watch. It gives you emotion and action set in an interesting world with some technical achievements that's beyond easy to swallow. It can be so non-offensive and safe that it feels a little forgettable as time goes on. This could be why I just don't hear people talk about this film that much, even though it's the #1 movie of all time at the box office. That's not to say it's bad, but comparing to some of the most loved franchises, most of which didn't take 13 years for a sequel, it just doesn't compare on the depth or level of character development or risk-taking like they did. Star Wars, Harry Potter, or even Avatar: The Last Airbender has elements that strive far beyond. Take Star Wars for an example. It was not only a technical marvel of its time and presents similar thematic themes as Avatar, you also have a rich cast of characters that are deeply developed, set in a universe that seems never-ending with endless possibilities that spark the imagination. That could also be echoed in other popular series as well. I know there's a lot of fans out there of James Cameron's Avatar. I'm sure there's a good amount of people out there that this is their favorite film. Maybe I'm in a bit of a cultural bubble where I live, but I just don't hear anyone talk about this film in the same light as those other franchises. Sure, I don't really know anyone who hates this film, but I also don't know anyone who says this is their favorite film. It's a good movie, a solid 8 out of 10 if you will. I'll definitely watch it again, but it may be a few years before I do so. Maybe as the sequels come, Pandora will flourish into something that rivals those other franchises that fester the zeitgeist, but this film just felt like a bubble, an explosion of popularity that simmered out into a murmur as time went on, laundering money throughout the years to come. Damn, I feel like I've been harsh on this movie, that I do overall enjoy. Like, it's an 8 out of 10, okay? It's an 8 out of 10. It's good. It's actually pretty good. It's just not the greatest thing ever. It's an 8 out of 10. It's a solid 8 out of 10.
Hey, that's pretty good.
With the film now behind us, let's jump into the console port of the game and see what it's all about. It just crashed. It just crashed. The whole PlayStation froze. Son of a bitch. James Cameron's Avatar the game was released December 1st in 2009 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC, Wii, and Nintendo DS, with a PSP port being released on December 7th of 2009. Like I said earlier, I've played the PSP game and remember it being pretty fun, but I doubt I beat it. I thought this time around I'd sit down to play the Big Daddy console version on the PS3. I do want to give a disclaimer for the footage of this game. I thought it'd be fun to live stream me playing through the game, and I originally started out on YouTube streaming. I had my settings all messed up after having to re-download and set up OBS after a weird bug I encountered. Some of the footage isn't as high quality as I would like it to be. After the first stream, I tweaked the settings and went live on YouTube again, where I faced some connection issues and some bitrate dropping. After the second crash, I decided to finish out the Na'vi story on my own just as a recording. To finish the rest of the game, I jumped over to Twitch, where I had no issues whatsoever finishing the game. If you want to follow my gaming channel or Twitch, there's links in the description below, and that's the disclaimer over. You start the game off by picking your character. There's no difficulty to choose from, which is foreboding for me, who normally plays games on easy. There's a good selection of characters to choose from, but I went with female number 6 for her splash of red hair. From here, you're off to Hell's Gate. This is already seeming to be pretty different than the PSP version I played years ago. You're introduced to your character talking to Dr. Grace, which I believe, according to IMDb, they got most of the cast to reprise their roles in the game. You land at Hell's Gate and you talk to Kendra, who'll be one of your go-to characters throughout the game. She calls you out and your name is apparently Ryder. After talking to Kendra, she catches you up to speed. You've been asleep for 5 years. Wait, I thought the movie said it was 6 years?
5 years asleep in space, and now
I thought it was 6 years.
In cryo, you don't dream at all. Doesn't feel like 6 years.
She tells you that you're here to be in the Avatar program and to go to Dr. Monroe to check out your avatar. You got to go to the marker on the map, and quickly you'll learn that you'll be traveling a lot in this game, meeting Dr. Monroe, who treats you like crap as you jump into your avatar. This plays out a lot like the movie, and you get to look at your big goofy feet. You don't go Forrest Gump running like Jake does, but it's basically the same thing. From there, you need to talk to Kendra, who tells you to talk to Falco, who's the captain of the place currently. I want you to notice that we talk to Kendra first as a middleman. Throughout the whole game, you will always have to talk to some middleman and then talk to the real person. It's just filler that definitely gets old after a while. Falco tells us he fought to get us here because we're super good at being a code breaker, or whatever that means. Also, there's a mole you need to uncover. From here, we're off to fly to Blue Lagoon. Landing down in the Blue Lagoon, you can tell that right away. The world of Pandora is The world of Pandora is actually pretty cool and seems to have a lot of attention to detail. Kendra tells you that there's a bunch of Viper Wolves attacking the area and you need to fight them off by jumping up onto a turret. Viper Wolves being the little black dogs from the movie. After slaughtering the local wildlife, Kendra tells you to take a buggy to find Dalton. The vehicles throughout the whole game pretty much all handle pretty poorly, honestly. On my way, I killed a Viper Wolf and noticed an item on the ground. These are called cell samples, and you need to collect 10 of them to get a recovery. Recoveries fully heal you when you die instead of sending you back to the checkpoint. You can carry up to 5 of them at one time, and I would recommend always trying to collect these when you can. I found Dalton hidden behind a waterfall being surrounded by Viper Wolves, which he's just like totally ignoring. Dalton says he needs help to get a signal up, but he's freaking out, so we go for him and send his ass back to camp. Along the way, I have to kill a bunch of Viper Wolves, but once I jumped into the buggy, I'm there in a second. Heading back to the base, I activate the GMI, which will allow you to teleport to other GMIs spread around the levels map. Considering how much of this game you'll spend traveling back and forth on the levels, I would recommend activating any of these you come remotely close to. To activate them, all you have to do is just walk up to them. There's also these little modules that are all over the place that once you activate it by pressing triangle, it will act as like a checkpoint and will also refill your ammo and reload all your guns instantly. From here, I talked to a guy that tells you Kendra went to the south base and you have to take a boat to get to her. Once you get there, Kendra tells you to check in with Dalton again at the fence. Dalton tells you you need to activate sonic repulsors that will expel the Viper Wolves. Pretty much go down river, kill some Viper Wolves, activate, rinse, repeat, and objective done. Report back to Dalton, and this is when I looked through the different weapons you can carry. You can equip 3 weapons with the D-pad, one of the 4 slots being locked in as your infinite ammo dual pistols. You have the option between the nail gun, flamethrower, shotgun, standard issue, assault rifle, grenade launcher, and M60 machine gun. I didn't really try out a lot of the guns, but mainly stuck with the shotgun, assault rifle, and M60 after I realized how terrible the grenade launcher was. The Na'vi having a separate set of weapons like a crossbow or dual swords or a spear. From here, I also discovered the armor sets you unlock after a while and your skill sets. So as you go throughout the game, you gain XP from completing missions and killing stuff, and that XP levels you up. When you level up, you unlock better armor, better weapons, and your skills upgrade as well. Everything upgrades automatically to you, which is nice because you don't really have any use for any of the older stuff as you go forward. The skills allow you to activate temporary powers in battle. Both the Na'vi and the humans have slightly different skills, but mostly the same effects. As the humans, you have the skill to heal yourself, call in airstrikes, concussion grenade, and etc. Whereas the Na'vi, you have the same skill sets, but add in nature rather than military to pull these effects off. In this menu, you can also see what you'll unlock as you gain XP. You'll also find Pandorapedia, where you can learn about the flora and fauna of Pandora, the different weapons and the armor sets, and look at all the tutorials if you need a refresher. From here though, Kendra makes you link up with your avatar, which immediately I noticed the avatar runs faster, which makes sense since you're so much bigger. The avatars have different fast travel checkpoints in the form of trees, and also, do you remember how I said you can pick up cells to act as recoveries from killing things? Well, avatars can actually get them from plants, so as you play as the avatar, you will almost always have a max recovery pool due to the abundance of cells, which is really nice. Whereas with the humans, I never reached 5 because enemies rarely drop them. Also, as the avatar, Pandora's flora and fauna will pretty much ignore you besides the Viper Wolves and one of the big beefalo things. As the avatar, if you attack non-aggressive wildlife, you will not receive any XP for killing them. When you finally reach Dr. Harper, who is somewhat aggro towards you like everyone else in the game, another researcher will ask you to collect some samples. Engage the game play loop.
Slingshot engaged.
Pretty much the entire game will be talk to someone, travel across the map, collect something, kill something, or bomb something, then head back and talk to someone, all while killing everything in your path to and fro. This is the entire game. What you collect, kill, or interact with may be different, but the core is exactly the same. From here you meet Tangela, a Na'vi leader who tells you the Sky People have brought disease to their world and you must kill those infected. Basically, go fetch the thing and kill it. After this, you go see Falco, who tells you to track down Tangela to find the mole. Once you get there, you find Dr. Harper is the mole. When you confront Harper, he tells you about the destruction the humans have had on Pandora, and you literally see it for yourself. When Falco shows up, you now have a choice to choose from. Are you going to attack Falco and protect Harper, or follow your orders and take Harper down? Oh, is this gonna make us like choose?
I order you to shoot Harper.
This is where I wish I had concurrent viewers, because I'd be like, what should we do? I don't know what I want to do here. Do I want to shoot? Am I going the avatar route or the soldier route? I like the avatars better. The humans are stupid. I chose to go the Na'vi route because that's the route of the movie, and the movie's villains are the humans, so going with the human side just seemed weird to the lore of Avatar. However, I really hate the game putting this on so early. You have no time to develop the switch. The entire movie is to set up Jake turning on the humans in favor of the Na'vi, where in the game you're literally here for like 1 day or 2 and the doctor just shows you a taste of destruction and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm on your side now.
Cause f them, that's why.
It's just really forced with no build up, and you don't have the character build up either to be like, it makes sense for this character to jump to the Na'vi side. I'm probably going to bounce between Na'vi and Na'vi as I go throughout this. I'll try to catch it when I can. Once you take down Falco, he escapes and you start the Na'vi campaign, and you're just fully invested from here on out. Of course, all the Na'vi, pretty much like everyone else in the game, treats you like dirt.
Am I beneath you?
Definitely.
From here, you need to collect a special flower to impress Beidamo, who will be one of the main Na'vi characters who hates your guts, by the way, just like everyone else, I suppose. After Beidamo gets his special little flowers, you need to collect some explosives to help with an attack. Collect 7 and go talk to someone. From here on out, I can just fast forward the collecting, right? As you fight the never-ending horde of RDA soldiers, they will shred you. They might have some of the best accuracy I've ever seen in a game. Or period. You're just underpowered compared to them early in the game. That will fix itself as time goes on, but there's no denying that they laser you straight out of the gate. Like I said, collect those cells. Also, the bow without a doubt is one of the best weapons in the Na'vi's repertoire. The game has a pseudo lock-on mechanic that really helps with the bow as well. If you pull back full strength on the bow, it's almost a one-shot for most of the ground soldiers. Once you collect the explosives, you rig up a tower to blow the base. Beidamo still tells you that you suck and you must tame an Ikran or Banshee, which is one of the weird things is that your character never really calls anything by its Na'vi name, but rather its human name, which I figured if you're going to go full blue, why not use their language for their names? As you go on and tame an Ikran, this might be one of the worst flying mechanics I've ever played in a game.
You come from the sky, yet you cannot fly. You call yourself a rider, yet you cannot ride.
No, that's just my name. I didn't call myself Ryder, my mom did. Oh my god, this is terrible. This is so bad.
A rock flies better than you.
Well, it's not my fault. I didn't design the controls of this thing. Oh my god, this is so bad. Ah! Just gonna run in all kinds of stuff. Oh god, I'm stuck. I'm stuck, I can't see anything. Help me. They add a somewhat bouncy feeling to it, so when it flaps its wings, it kind of moves around a little bit. And mix that with its already janky flying controls that everything else in the game has, it's a nightmare to fly between rocks around Pandora. Thankfully, you never really have to do any fighting while flying, because the devs probably knew how bad it handled. We fly back to Beidamo, who still says we suck, and of course we gotta fly all over the map to take out RDA towers. It should be mentioned that in the movie, they say an Ikran will only bond with one person for life.
Once a halo is made, Ikran will fly with only one hunter in the whole life.
But in the game, you can just jump on any of them. It's a little contradicting. After taking out the 3 towers, you fly back to Beidamo, who basically says, "Why didn't you die?" He tells you to find Harper, who brought our avatar chambers to the village when the village is attacked. On this objective, you gotta climb on top of a tower, jump onto the dragon, hit it, rinse and repeat between the 2 towers a couple of times, and you've destroyed it. After taking down the dragon, the other dragons come in and destroy your avatar chamber, so they perform the Neuralink upload to your avatar body just like the movie. Also, Harper died in the attack. From there, you talk to Sanumi, the Tasik of the tribe, who tells you the humans are attempting to control Eywa by finding the forgotten Well of Souls. We must find it first, and in order to do so, we have to collect shards and tune them to get a song to play for Eywa. That's pretty much going to be the rest of this game. Each section being traveling the map, do an objective for the Na'vi, collect the shard, rinse and repeat 3 times, do one last objective and collect the song, travel back to Home Tree, play the song, and go to the next area. I decided to play around with the crossbow, which sucked, so I ended up sticking with the machine gun, the staff, and the dual swords, really only using either the dual swords or the main bow. When you use the dual swords, you build a combo that releases a special attack, which is honestly pretty strong. For the fighting moves, you really only have a couple of animations, which does get stale after a while. I also mess around with the skills and equipped the Wrath of Awa, which is basically an airstrike, and I also played around with the Viper Wolf skill, which will call upon a Viper Wolf to aid your fight, which honestly did a lot of nothing, as most of the AI in the game rarely impacts or kills anything, which is the same for your friendly little Viper Wolf. However, the ability upgrades into something awesome later in the game. So we travel to Satulu to meet with Lungaray. So after traveling far and killing a bunch of stuff and running all over the map, we couldn't find Lungaray, so we're told to stop the bulldozers and maybe we'll find them. Honestly, I really like the design of this level and it showcases the humans' destruction really well, helping add to that theme of Avatar. We take down the 2 bulldozers and now must take down the tower and free Na'vi imprisoned by the humans. So more traveling, more killing swarms of enemies, and we free the prisoners but still no Lungaray. Tips to travel faster if you don't ride something is to spam the dodge button as you do this roll type of maneuver to move forward. It just helps you travel across the map on ground a lot quicker. So we are told Lungaray has sent a sign to lead us to the Willow and collect the shards. You finally find Lungaray, who tells you to collect the shards so you can find the Well of Souls. I love the look of this area. That incandescent nature of Pandora is just beautiful and the game does a great job at capturing that look. Considering this game is from 2009 and a movie tie-in, it has some pretty great visuals at times. What is happening? The soldier's hanging out the back. Or was. That was funny. Once you collect the 3 shards, you go to one of the willows to tune them, where you kind of just wander around the tree until the controller vibrates and you get the prompt to interact with something in the area. Every time you do this, it's pretty much in the exact same triangle pattern, so once you do it once, it's the same every time. It becomes quick and easy to do it later on in the game. However, Lungaray gets JFK'd and Tangela shows up killing off the enemies. You're left to figure out how to use the shards to find the Well of Souls yourself. Thank goodness we're this code breaker after all. We head back to Home Tree after tuning the shards and play the song for Awa, and yes, they make you run up and down this tree every single time. Once we play the song, we talk to a bunch of people again and then head off to Toruk Nari. From there, we talk to more Na'vi to figure out where the shards are, who tells us that the animals the humans have corrupted no longer speak to Awa, so we must kill them. We also have to take down another dragon, but this time instead of jumping on it, you have to shoot out its propellers. For a reward of freeing the animals, we get a Nargacuga to ride ourselves, after we collect some plants from Ekran nests, that is. And this thing is awesome. Sure, it handles terribly, but you can attack with this one, and it shreds enemies. Once again though, you just go through collecting the shards, doing a task beforehand, like killing so many enemies, collect the shard, and then head back to the base. To collect another shard, you gotta kill a couple of the Nargacugas, which honestly, I thought fighting one of these things would be a lot cooler, but it's basically just slowly walking around as you lay into it, then dies, and it's pretty boring. After collecting the 3rd shard, can you guess what happens next? That's right! We went to a willow and tuned it, and then head back to Home Tree and play the song. After playing the song, we talk to Tangela and head off to another place to collect 3 shards once again. Once there, it's literally the same thing again. Go find someone, kill a bunch of people, go find someone, kill a bunch of people. This time though, we gotta escort somebody back. Funny enough, a scorpion kills the person we're escorting, so we're sent back to the checkpoint, but the scorpion plane doesn't respawn this time, so it's pretty much smooth sailing from here on out. Once we get back to the camp, we have to kill an amp suit, one of those suits that looks like it's ripped straight out of Aliens. Then back to the loop. Talk to someone, kill. Collect the shard, talk to someone, find someone, kill. Talk to someone, kill while gathering. Talk to someone, collect the hunters. Talk to someone, kill, collect the shard. Travel across the map, killing everyone. Talk to Beidamo, who still thinks you suck. Go kill people. Go back to talk to Beidamo, who hates you. Travel across the map, killing people. Set explosives. Travel across the map, kill people. Talk to Beidamo, who still thinks you suck. Kill a ton of people. Collect the final shard. And then the stream crashed. Travel across the map, kill people, tune the shards, head back to Home Tree, play the song, talk to Tangela, and head off to get yet another song. This map though is definitely a lot more hostile, as there's basically a constant war going on around you, but it's still the same thing. Travel across the map, talk to someone, collect the shard, travel across the map, talk to someone, all while killing droves of enemies. The only key difference this time is that the humans blow up the shards right before you collect them, but the loop remains the same. At this point I realized I could just use horses to run past everything with literally no consequences, so I basically just did that from here on out, ignoring the war around me. tree. To get the last shard, you have to take down an RDA base with a stampede of whatever those beasts are called, and it's a nice change of pace for the most part. Get that shard, talk to the tree, then head back to home tree, same song and dance. This time though, you go talk to Kendra, who has turned mole, to tell you that Falco has found the Well of Souls and is going to blow it up, so you have to get there and stop him. Annoying thing is that they make you run down home tree to talk to Kendra and then make you run all the way back up the home tree to talk to Tangela. My finger spamming the dodge move is going to be shredded by the end of this game. Before heading to the Tree of Souls, you head to the Plains of Goliath, where there's an all-out war between the Na'vi and RDA. Again, I pretty much just ran through the entire map, ignoring everything to rush through it because the fighting is just getting super old at this point. This time though, instead of collecting the shards, you have to kill a handful of bosses that are just beefier versions of the same thing you've been fighting this whole time. They're really easy. This is when I realized that once the Viper Wolf ability levels up enough, you get to summon the big dog for a limited time that you can ride around, and it's awesome. After killing the 3 bosses, you talk to Beidamo, who's like, "It's your time to save Pandora." "What, do I not suck now? Do we finally get your approval, you ass?" After this, you go to Tantalus to awaken the Well of Souls. Same shtick though. Travel across the map, kill a bunch of people. There's another defend the hill style mission that's actually pretty long here. The objective is to kill so many RDA soldiers, but once you complete that objective, the timer keeps going and you still have to defend it until the time's out. So what was the point of the specific number for the objective? Anyways, after this you get to ride the big bad Ikron, the Toruk, into the Well of Souls. I don't know if it's the weight of this thing or what, but it does handle much better than just a regular Ikron does. Unfortunately though, you don't really get to do much with this big bad monster. I feel like I keep saying things weird. Like I feel like I keep saying things inconsistently when it comes to naming some of these like Na'vi names. Only fly a short distance to the Well of Souls, and once you're there you talk to the tree when Awa takes out the dragon, and boom, credits. It's honestly somewhat of an anticlimactic ending. After finishing the Na'vi side, I gotta say I was somewhat positive on the game. However, the game does make you choose early on to pick a story path, and I wouldn't feel like I really represented the game without doing the human story as well. One nice thing about this is the game creates a separate save file at the choice, so you can just click it and hop right into where you confront Dr. Harper. This time around you shoot Dr. Harper and stay on the human side, and honestly, I gotta be honest with you, I regret doing this. Going through the human side honestly got to me. It got under my skin and honestly somewhat ruined my experience because it's the same thing as the Na'vi. It's literally the exact same thing down to a T, with it being about an hour shorter even though it feels years longer. But the core loop is the same. You literally collect the same shards and everything. I thought maybe you could laser the Na'vi like they did to you and that would be okay to burn through it, but nope. Of course, they're spongier and they laser you with arrows or whack you with their sticks. Every level making you run back and forth with now more enemies than before because every bit of wildlife and the plants attack you now, so every time you travel it's a hassle and a chore. God, these plants are ridiculous to kill. How much range do they have for real? Oh my god, these plants are ridiculous, man. Why would you go toward it? All that stupid lock on. Oh my god, this is horse. Oh, off! I'm not even going the right way, am I? I got turned around and now I can't see where I'm going. After picking the human side as Dr. Harper is falling off the cliff, he nails your avatar with an arrow, so your avatar is dead now. A group of banshees attack your plane and you crash with Kendra as you gotta run to the nearest camp to get help. Once at the camp, you gotta jump into a scorpion and go pick Kendra, but first you need to clear out a bunch of banshee nests. And aiming weapons in this thing is super frustrating. The problem is you can't really tilt the plane's front end any to really help aim, and you can only shoot head on. After this, Falco tells you he has a plan to bring peace to the planet, but you need to collect 3 shards and then take them to a willow tree. It's the same thing. It's the same story. How lazy is this? Like, you couldn't make up a different mission format for the humans. You literally had to make it the exact same thing. Maybe if the dialogue was a little better, it wouldn't be so bad, but it's even the same as the Na'vi side. Both sides' story boils down to the enemy is doing something bad. You need to collect shards. The enemy is doing something bad. You need to collect shards. The enemy is doing something bad. You need to collect shards. Tune the shards. Play the song. Go to the next world. And Groundhog's Day. For both of our souls, I'm going to really boil down the human playthrough since it doesn't really matter and they didn't even try to do anything different. I will say also the Na'vi, as you progress through the human story, gets super annoying to fight as they have this special ability to turn invisible and invincible for a few seconds while they can still attack you, and it's pretty obnoxious when you fight a large group that can do this ability. After collecting the first group of shards and tuning them, you get to meet your new pilot Trudy, which is Michelle Rodriguez's character from the movie, which she does reprise her role here. Off to the next level, collect 3 shards and tune them. It's kind of interesting that some of the main characters of the soldiers side was characters that ended up being bosses, if you want to call them that, I guess. And the reverse is said for the Na'vi, where its reoccurring characters are going to be bosses for the humans. Also on the human side, we are introduced to one more of Pandora's creatures that we didn't see on the Na'vi side, being the big hammerhead. They're still pretty easy to kill. I will say this time around I did learn to pretty much drive or fast travel everywhere, just to bypass a lot of the chorish fighting, which might reflect why this playthrough was a little quicker than the Na'vi side. One thing I will say though is that most of the map's levels seem to be different than what we played through the Na'vi side, but after a while you will play on the same levels toward the end of the game, but at least there's a spark of some creativity here. Once tuned up, you end up in a boss fight against Beidamo, and he's pretty easy to kill. It felt kind of nice since he just kept telling us how much we suck and should die on the Na'vi side. Back to headquarters, talk to Doc, and we're back out for another level. We'll go collect another 3 shards and tune them. This time though, there's a section where you get to ride on a turret of a vehicle, and it's pretty fun just being an on-rail shooter for a moment. You also have to kill Tangela this time around, which is just weird killing such important characters in the other story so early and quickly. It really shows how underdeveloped the human side of the story is, since the bosses you kill in that story have no weight like the characters from the Na'vi story. Beidamo and Tangela are main characters throughout the whole story who you constantly interact with. This is not the case here at all with the human characters. Besides Kendra, you pretty much don't interact with anybody on a regular basis. After killing Tangela, who was once again pretty easy, tune up the shards and head out and repeat the cycle again. I noticed after landing in the next map, the humans have more King of the Hill style missions where you have to kill so many Na'vi coming after you while defending an area. It felt like you did this a lot more on the human side than you did the Na'vi side. This time you're tasked with hunting down the chamber pods of Dr. Harper and his team and eliminate them while also collecting the shards. This level, the Hanging Gardens, is by far what felt like the level that took the longest, and it's really bad about making you travel back and forth collecting all the shards and finding the Avatar pilots. Also, this is the first time in the game that it just straight up crashed on me. It just crashed. This was the level though that the loop, the repetitiveness, and the onslaught was really starting to get to me, as I just wanted to be done with the game. Not only did this level break the game, it broke me too. Collecting the shards is pretty much the same, but when you take out the Avatar pilots, you have to kill their avatar along with a bunch of Na'vi. Once their avatar is dead, they pop out of their pods, and then you have to kill their human body as well, while also being harassed by the Na'vi. It's typically simple, but it's frustrating nonetheless. After killing the 2 avatars that isn't Dr. Harper, you head into the Lost Cathedral to find Dr. Harper and take him out. Harper being pretty much the same as the other ones, just in a prettier area. Tune the shards and you're back off to Hell's Gate once again. When you get back though, you see that Falco has locked up Dr. Monroe and anyone who has questioned his authority. Kendra tells you that you need to stop his madness. Honestly, Falco's turn here feels really forced and underdeveloped. You jump into the Plains of Goliath, which is structured exactly the same as when you played through it with the Na'vi side. You meet up with Stephen Lang's character.
I'm Colonel Quaritch.
And you have to take out 3 leaders like you did on the Na'vi side when you played this map. Each of these boss fights pretty much being exactly the same as the rest, where you just kind of hold down fire and dodge occasionally. However, before you start down this road, the Na'vi you meet offers you yet another choice. Oh, come on, there's literally another choice to make here? Oh, what do we do? What the why is there another choice? You literally split the campaign. Why is there another choice here at the end?
You can stop Falco, and you can help people of Pandora. Head Na'vi, join us, and stop RDA.
You choose between continuing down the RDA path or join the Na'vi. Since I already did the Na'vi side, I continued down the RDA path, which starts the Na'vi boss fights. I'm not sure what would happen if you picked the Na'vi side here. If it would pick up right at the Na'vi side of the story, which is weird because your avatar body is supposedly dead, I believe. The game doesn't create another save spot for you to jump easily back into it, and I'm not about to play through the human side again to pick the Na'vi side here. Once you kill the other 2 bosses, Lang sends you to Tantalus to track down Falco. You hop into the dragon and fly your way around the map, similar to the Na'vi side when you get the last shadow, but you get more airtime with the dragon. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the mech suits or the amp suits are awesome in this game. I always try to jump into one when I could. Pretty much just fly around to the checkpoints when someone tells you that Falco slipped by them, until you reach Falco at the Well of Souls or whatever. There you have a boss fight with Falco, but he activates his device, which makes the Banshees kick their riders. Lang tells you that whatever happened at the well has made the Na'vi retreat. Grace tells you that we lost Kendra somehow, and that we have control of AWA, and that basically this whole story was pointless, and was only to show AWA what we're capable of. Roll credits. Lame. Oh, super lame. If you're gonna play this, just pick a side, preferably the Na'vi side, and just play that. The human side is so stupid. It's so lame. I'm not gonna lie, when I finished the game on the Na'vi side, I was feeling pretty good about it. It was fun and short. Sure, the gameplay loop is repetitive, but it didn't feel like it was overstaying its welcome. It ended right around the time I wanted it to. The gameplay is pretty solid. It's nothing like, let's say, God of War with its combat or Uncharted with its shooting, but it's basic and serviceable. The graphics were surprisingly decent for the time, and the fact that it's a licensed game despite some frame drops and screen tearing looked pretty good. The world of Pandora was pretty cool to play through, even though it felt a little vacant in variety of its wildlife. Flying over the large maps and seeing all the detail and world design helps pull you into the Avatar universe. The maps themselves being pretty well designed, even though you have to constantly back travel and the hordes of enemy can be chorish as you go through it. They can be a little confusing to navigate, but never something that you completely get lost in. The music wasn't anywhere near as good as in the movie, and there's a lot of times that the music cuts in and out as the game is struggling to run it properly at moments. It's almost like for everything good I can say about the game, there's a "but this is bad as well" attached to that. Still, at this time, I was positive on the game and would have given it a soft recommendation because it's not the best game out there and it might be hard to track down unless you order it online, with it being older as well. But after finishing the human side, it really took this game down a notch for me. Personally, I think if you were to go play this game, just pick a storyline and finish it and move on. It's completely unnecessary to beat both sides of the story. To me, the Na'vi side is the way to go. Not only does it connect with the themes of the film better and follow in its footsteps, it's clearly the more developed side as well. The different Na'vi have more development and are more important to the story. It's longer to build its plot, and you don't take 2 steps without being bombarded by the flora fauna that makes exploring these levels so tedious as a human. The human side not only goes against the themes of the film, but the story doesn't build any of its characters besides you and Kendra. Falco has a twist for no reason, to where the humans still end up being the bad guy anyways at the end. With the Na'vi, you fend off the humans, so while there's no boss fight at the end, you still feel like you saved the day and the story had purpose. The human side, while you get an easy, simple boss fight, the ending felt pointless, which made the experience of playing through it feel like a waste of time. The human side feels like a chore to explore the world, since literally every plant wants to kill you, and the fact that the story also mirrors the Na'vi story so hard when you're playing it, especially playing it right after the Na'vi side, it can just be frustratingly lazy. As the human story went on, all it did was worsen my experience and make me like the game less. Finishing the Na'vi side, I was probably at like a 6 out of 10, but after finishing the human side, I wanted to give it like a 4 or a 4.5. Settling on a 5 because it's not that bad, it's just super repetitive and lazy. But how does this stack up to the movie?
Very bad. Very, very bad.
Comparing the movie to the game does present some inconsistencies, some of which I've mentioned earlier. I pointed out the travel times and the Banshees, but the game acts as a prequel to the movie. However, the game presents a large-scale war between the humans and the Na'vi, which isn't present in the movie. The movie presents the locals don't take too kindly to the humans, but not to this level of conflict. I mean, you step anywhere around this place and it's full-blown war. The game also presents the idea that we've already shown AWA what the humans are capable of, which completely undermines the scene of the film where Jake talks to AWA, which leads to AWA helping the Na'vi at the end of the film.
So what was this all for?
AWA needed to see what we're capable of. And now she knows. Next time, she'll be ready.
Look into our memories.
See the world we come from.
There's no green there. They killed their mother.
Wouldn't AWOL already be doing something if it knew what humans were capable of? The game presents different clans of the game, which the movie doesn't really explore too much into the different clans, but it also doesn't feel like there's been this massive past war between them either. The movie presents the military or militia as a force to uphold security, which eventually leads into a large-scale conflict in the movie. In the game, they're just pretty much here to kill everything. The game also introduces characters from the movie, which one thing I noticed is that Stephen Lang's character shows up and is apparently new, but if you look, he already has his scars. In the movie, he says he got his scars the first night, so what's going on here? The game also unfortunately makes the world of Pandora seem much smaller in scale with its wildlife. Pretty much everything you see in the game, with the exception of maybe a few creatures or different skins / morphs, are straight from the movie. Sure, you can see more of Pandora in the game, but the game doesn't feel like it expanded upon the world or present really anything new besides some characters for its story into the Avatar universe. Some more or new creatures along with some more or new flora would have been awesome. It feels like a completely missed opportunity. The game does a good job at capturing the vibrance and danger of Pandora. It does echo the themes of the movie if you pick the Na'vi story, but ultimately doesn't capture the magic or the development of the film that lets you melt into its own universe. The story of the game does try to mimic the story of the movie, which, considering its similar plot beats, can also cheapen the experience of the game. This is one of those games that if you already have it and haven't played it, give it a go. If you've already played it, why bother revisiting it unless you loved it? It's not something I'd really recommend unless you're a huge Avatar fan, and not that one. I know I went out of my way to get a copy of the game, but I really wouldn't recommend going out of your way for this one. The movie is just better. It's a more self-sustained, well, currently self-sustained experience, which is why James Cameron's Avatar and James Cameron's Avatar the game gets the rating of watch it. So since this video took so long to finish, I was actually able to see Avatar 2 in theaters, and honestly I really enjoyed it. I did a short review of it, but I figured it would only make sense to kind of talk about the film here as well. Avatar: The Way of the Water was released 13 years after the first film, and it's about Jake raising his family with Neytiri in the aftermath of the first film. Years later, one day the RDA reappear, which causes Jake to lead a rebellion against them, this eventually causing Jake and his family to be on the run and finding sanctuary with a water tribe. While there, they must learn their ways of the water. Going into this film, my biggest concern would be that it would just feel like it was filler, since they've already announced 3 more sequels. I felt like Way of the Water would only be set up for what was to come, and that's not really the case. Yes, they do set up things here for the following films, but the story itself can be somewhat of a standalone, recapping the first enough that if you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, it really doesn't matter, which I think is kind of a strong point for this film. Right out of the gate, when you first see a close-up of Neytiri, I literally thought, oh my god, as just how amazing the CGI was. Honestly, the CGI is a massive step up from the first. The first film, looking back at it, has some really rubbery textures that doesn't exactly feel realistic, where this time around, you can literally see every pore, skin wrinkle, and so on, that it just looks absolutely amazing. While it could be dated in the future, it's pretty mind-blowing for today's standards. The film also spends almost its entirety CG'd, so there's not as much blending issues using real people. Not to say that the blending is bad by any means when it is here, it's just not as much, which I think helps sells the look of the film. This is a long film, almost 3.5 hours, but without needing the setup like the first film. The Way of the Water uses its longer runtime to really develop its cast of characters, as everyone gets a good amount of screen time to allow you to get attached to them as the main crew. This film also explores and expands upon the flora and fauna of Pandora, which is a huge plus for me, because the most interesting aspect to me in these films is the ecology of Pandora. All this being bolstered by some really good and intense action set pieces. The first film being a message on deforestation, while this film is more of a message about damaging the ocean and harming the wildlife, such as like hunting whales. This time around, the RDA is looking for Pandora well-brain juice that's supposed to stop the aging process, but I'm glad this isn't really the main factor of the film like Unobtainium was. I also really like the choice on how they chose to speak English the whole film. I know a lot of people don't like this, but for me, I enjoyed how they did it. I understand that people aren't going to want to sit through a 3.5 hour film to read subtitles in America, but the way the film makes the transition I thought was pretty clever. James Cameron's going to make a movie that appeals to the widest audience possible because that's what he does. The idea to say that Jake is so used to speaking Na'vi that it might as well be English at this point, and then during that scene having the film transfer the language from Na'vi to English just really worked for me. The film also has the Na'vi speak Na'vi around non-Na'vi speaking people, but when it's all Na'vi or characters who only speak Na'vi, they choose to do it in English, and it's pretty easy to follow. I didn't really notice much inconsistencies either on a first viewing, but it might pop up on a second viewing. My biggest issue with the film really comes down to the character of Spider, who I felt like was only a character here to be a plot device, and I felt some of his actions were only there to set up a later scene or to help set up the other films. Also, while I think the score is okay, it's really forgettable compared to the first film, which I think had a pretty great score. The first film, using an almost tribalish style of music mixed with like an orchestra, just really fit the tone of the film really well, where the music in this film just felt more generic. However, they did reuse the theme from the first film that I think worked really well in the scene it was in. Another thing that I found slightly distracting is that Sigourney Weaver voiced Kiri, who's basically a teenager, and her voice is a little too old for the role, if that makes any sense. For me, I think I like the overall story of the first better, as in a way it felt more grandiose, but this film made up for that by exploring the world and its characters more. I'm not sure which of the two I like more, but I really enjoyed both. And if Way of the Water did anything right, it was the fact that it made me more invested into the world of Pandora and made me more excited for the sequels. And I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. That video took forever to finish. I wanted to have this video done way before Avatar 2 came out to try to get, some of that hype and wave of Avatar 2, but yeah, Avatar 2 is like almost out of theaters now, I think. And that movie just keeps making money like the first movie did. I do want to say, if you made it this far in the video, that I really appreciate it. I know this was a long, chunky thing to sit through, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe enough to subscribe if you haven't already. Maybe like the video. Maybe turn on notifications. If you've already subscribed to the channel, welcome back. Thank you for all the support. It means the world to me. It really does. These big videos are super fun to make, but they just take forever to go through. I have a bit of an announcement to make, and that is I'm opening up channel memberships on this channel. Is that your chicken? Is that your chicken? The first tier unlocks emotes and badges, also has access to member-only streams. I think I'm going to be streaming some of my editing process here on YouTube as like a member-only stream. They'll be kind of like small, intimate streams, and then I'll probably just end up deleting them after the stream. I've got a $4.99 or $5 tier, depending on if you're an optimist or a pessimist. That's an inside joke with my wife, where you get all the perks from the first tier, but also you get your name at the end of credits. Like this video, you would have a credit scroll with your name in it. And I have kind of an expensive tier of $24.99 where you send me a movie suggestion and I'll do a short review of it. So those are the tiers. That would be a great way to support the channel if you want to support more. Subscribing, though, or just liking videos, just watching the content, though, is by far enough to support the channel. Yeah, this little outro has been just a mess, but I hope you enjoyed the content. I made you some content. I can't sing worth it. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.